Maya Thompson sat quietly at the end of the long dinner table, her hands resting on her lap as laughter and chatter filled the air around her. The restaurant sparkled with soft golden lights, the kind that made everything look beautiful and warm, except for how cold the people at her table made her feel. It was supposed to be a happy evening, a celebration of her father's retirement. Everyone had come dressed in elegant clothes, smiling and toasting, telling stories about his long career. Plates clinked, glasses touched, and laughter echoed through the private hall. But no one looked at Maya. No one spoke to her. She had arrived early, as she always did, making sure everything was perfect. She had even reserved the best table in the restaurant, double-checking every detail to make the night special. Yet now, sitting there, it was as if she didn't exist. Her half-sister, Vanessa, leaned toward her husband and whispered something with a smirk. The people closest to her laughed quietly. Maya didn't need to hear the words to know what they were about. But then Vanessa said it clearly enough for everyone nearby to catch. You know she's only here because she wants Dad's approval. A few people chuckled. Their father, Mr. Thompson, looked in Maya's direction for a brief second, but said nothing. He just lifted his glass again and smiled at something Vanessa said next. Maya's heart sank, but she kept her face calm. She smiled politely, pretending she didn't care. She had learned long ago how to hide the sting of being ignored. After a few minutes, she decided to stand. Maybe it was time to leave. The laughter, the sideways glances, she'd had enough. But before she could take a step, the waiter appeared beside her. He spoke softly but clearly. "Ma'am, should I still bring the premium champagne and the prepaid dinner confirmation under your name?" The table went completely silent. Vanessa froze, her smile fading. Mr. Thompson looked confused. Everyone's eyes turned to Maya. The air seemed to grow heavier. The laughter died. For the first time that night, Maya had everyone's attention. She looked at the waiter, her voice steady. "Yes, please. Bring it out." The waiter nodded and walked away. Maya sat back down, lifting her chin slightly. She didn't gloat, didn't smile. But the silence that followed said everything. The dinner they were all enjoying, the one they thought was for their father, had been paid for and arranged by the woman they had ignored all night. And in that moment, the balance in the room shifted. The laughter that once surrounded her was gone. The power had changed hands, quietly and completely. She grew up the daughter of a housemaid who worked for the Thompsons. Her mother, Grace, was kind, hardworking, and quiet. She cooked their meals, cleaned their large house, and raised their children with care. But behind the closed doors of that same house, an affair began, one that would change everything. Mr. Thompson, the wealthy and respected businessman of the family, had an affair with Grace. From that secret relationship, Maya was born. But instead of being welcomed, she became a secret, a shadow the family never wanted to acknowledge. When Maya was little, she didn't understand why her father only visited at night or why she had to hide whenever guests came. All she knew was that she had a father somewhere in that big house, and that he never called her his daughter. When she turned 10, she was sent away to a boarding school. Her mother told her it was for the best, that she'd get a better education. But Maya knew the truth. Mrs. Thompson, Evelyn, didn't want her around. Evelyn couldn't stand the sight of the child who reminded her of her husband's mistake. While Vanessa and Ryan, the Thompson children, grew up surrounded by love, luxury, and family pride, Maya grew up in silence and distance. She watched from afar, sometimes catching glimpses of them in magazines or family photos, smiling like they owned the world. But Maya never gave up. She worked hard, determined to make something of herself. She earned scholarships, studied day and night, and eventually graduated with a law degree. When no one believed in her, she believed in herself. Years later, she started her own consulting firm, small at first, then successful enough to compete with top firms in Atlanta. Yet, even with all her success, a part of her heart remained wounded. The little girl inside her still wanted something money couldn't buy: acceptance. Maya was often called the mistake by those who knew the family's story. She had learned to smile through the whispers, to keep her head high when people looked at her with pity or judgment. She had everything she needed now: wealth, respect, confidence. But she still carried that old ache, the need to be seen by her father not as a problem, but as his daughter. When Maya heard that Mr. Thompson was retiring, she saw an opportunity. Maybe this was her chance to fix things, or at least try. She told herself it wasn't about the past, but about peace. So she arranged the dinner herself, choosing the finest restaurant in downtown Atlanta. She wanted the evening to be perfect, hoping it could bring her fractured family together. Even for one night, she sent the invitations, covered the full cost in advance, and reserved the private hall. She didn't tell anyone it was her doing. She just wanted her father to feel special. But deep down, she also hoped that maybe, this time, they would finally see her. Not as the maid's daughter or the family's secret, but as Maya Thompson. Her half-sister, Vanessa, had always been a problem. Beautiful, confident, and spoiled, Vanessa had spent her whole life competing for attention, even when there was no need to. She saw Maya's quiet success as a threat and often mocked her in subtle, cruel ways. Ryan, their brother, was softer, more neutral. He never joined in Vanessa's cruelty, but he never stopped it either. He simply followed her lead, too afraid or too uninterested to stand up for Maya. Mr. Thompson himself was a man full of guilt. He cared for Maya in his own way, but he never had the courage to admit it openly. He let others silence him, especially his wife, Evelyn. Evelyn was the coldest of them all. To her, Maya was nothing but proof of her husband's betrayal. She treated Maya's existence like a permanent stain on their family's name, something to be hidden, never acknowledged. And so, on the night of the dinner, Maya carried all those years of silence and pain inside her heart. She looked calm, graceful, and confident, but inside, she was fighting the same old battle, the desire to be loved versus the need to protect her peace. She wasn't sure if this dinner would heal anything, but she knew one thing for certain. It would be her last attempt. This time, she wouldn't beg for a seat. She would take her place, even if no one offered her one. Vanessa leaned back in her chair with a smirk and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "You know, some people actually buy their own invitations these days. So desperate to be included." A few people at the table laughed. Maya didn't respond. She just looked down at her plate, her fingers tracing the edge of her napkin. Her face stayed calm, but inside, her chest tightened. She told herself to breathe, to stay composed. The waiter walked over to refill the glasses. "Miss Thompson," he said politely, "would you like me to bring out the next course now?" "Miss Thompson," he said again, this time glancing toward Maya. Vanessa's eyes flicked up sharply. "It's Mrs. Thompson," she corrected with a fake laugh, pointing at herself. The waiter smiled kindly. "Oh, I meant Miss Maya Thompson. The reservation is under her name." The words hung in the air. For a moment, no one spoke. Vanessa's smile stiffened. Mr. Thompson shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. Evelyn quickly leaned forward and said, "Let's not confuse the poor man. Anyway, we were talking about Patrick's promotion." She turned to Vanessa's husband and began praising his new job at the firm. Everyone followed her lead, pretending to be interested. But the mood had changed. The tension sat heavy at the table like fog that wouldn't lift. Maya stayed quiet. She didn't want to ruin the night. She told herself this dinner was about her father, not her. But it was getting harder to stay calm. Vanessa wasn't done. She took a sip of her wine and said, "Money can get you a seat at the table, but it can't make you belong there." Ryan looked at her sharply, but didn't say anything. Mr. Thompson frowned, opening his mouth to speak, but Evelyn quickly placed her hand on his arm. "Let's not make a scene," she whispered. Maya felt her heart pounding. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall. She stood slowly, smoothing her dress. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I think I should go." Everyone turned to look at her, some curious, others indifferent. She was about to walk away when the waiter returned, holding a white envelope in his hand. "Ma'am," he said politely, "this is the prepaid contract for the entire event, catering, service, and the private hall booking. Everything's confirmed under your corporate account. Could you please sign here to finalize it?" Silence. All eyes went to Maya. Evelyn's fork slipped from her hand and clattered onto her plate. Vanessa froze, her mouth half open. Ryan looked from the waiter to Maya, confused. Mr. Thompson stared at his daughter, a mixture of pride and guilt flickering across his face. Maya felt everyone's gaze on her, but she didn't flinch. She took the pen, signed the paper calmly, and handed it back to the waiter. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "And please make sure the staff gets their tips early." The waiter smiled. "Of course, Miss Thompson." Then he walked away. leaving a stunned silence behind. No one said a word. Vanessa blinked, her cheeks flushed red. Evelyn shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. Maya stood there for a moment, looking at each of them. The family that had ignored her all her life, sitting at a table she had paid for. She gave a small, polite smile and said quietly, "I just wanted everyone to have a nice evening." Then she sat back down, lifting her glass. No one could look her in the eye. The dinner that had started with laughter and pride now sat in awkward silence, because the one person they had dismissed had just proven she didn't need their approval to belong. Vanessa tried to laugh, her voice sharp and shaky. "Oh, you paid for this? How generous." She forced a smile, glancing around the table as if waiting for someone else to join her laughter. No one did. Maya looked at her calmly. "I just wanted us to have one peaceful dinner together," she said softly. Her tone wasn't angry or defensive. It was quiet, too quiet, and that made it harder for everyone else to respond. Mr. Thompson shifted in his chair, his eyes down. His face looked heavy with shame, but he said nothing. He took a sip of water, pretending to be busy. The waiter came back with dessert, small plates of chocolate cake and strawberries, and began setting them down. Evelyn, who had been silent for a while, muttered under her breath, "Money can't buy class." The words weren't loud, but everyone heard them. Maya didn't react right away. She just took her fork and cut a small piece of her cake, eating it slowly, her expression calm. Her silence made the others even more uncomfortable. No one laughed now. The cheerful energy that had filled the table earlier was gone. What remained was a mix of tension, embarrassment, and unspoken truth. Vanessa pushed her plate away and folded her arms. "Let's be honest," she said, her voice rising. "You didn't do this for peace, Maya. You did this to show off, to prove you're better than us." Maya lifted her eyes to meet hers. Her voice was still steady, almost gentle. "If I wanted to show off, Vanessa, I'd have brought the lawyers, not dessert." The room went silent again. Even the waiter froze for a moment before quietly walking away. Ryan looked between his sisters, unsure what to do. Finally he said, "Vanessa, that's enough." Vanessa turned to him. "Excuse me." He sighed, frustrated. "She's done nothing wrong. She just wanted a family dinner. Why are we treating her like she doesn't belong here?" Evelyn gasped softly. "Ryan." But he continued, his voice firm now. "I'm serious. She's done more for this family lately than any of us. Who paid for Dad's retirement dinner? Who showed up first? Who's the one trying to make peace? Certainly not us." Vanessa's face turned red. "Don't take her side. You have no idea what she's really after." Ryan looked at her sharply. "What she's after? She's been after Dad's approval her whole life. You just couldn't stand the idea that someone outside your perfect circle might actually succeed." Maya sat quietly through it all. She didn't want to argue. She had come for peace, but the truth was spilling out whether she liked it or not. Vanessa stood up, her voice shaking now. "You don't understand, Ryan. She's always been the reminder of everything wrong with this family." Her words hung in the air like a slap. Evelyn looked away, pretending to fix her napkin. Mr. Thompson lowered his head, guilt filling his eyes. Maya took a deep breath. "You're right," she said softly. "I am a reminder. But not of something wrong, of something unfinished, of someone who tried to do right, and was never given the chance." Her calmness only made the others more uneasy. Vanessa sat back down slowly, glaring at her, but she didn't speak again. As everyone fell silent, memories filled Maya's mind, flashes of her childhood. She remembered standing outside the Thompson house, waiting for her father to come out, only to be told by a maid, "You can't play here. Go home." She remembered watching from the street as Vanessa and Ryan took family pictures in their perfect matching clothes, while she stood behind the gate invisible. She remembered her mother coming home late, tired and silent, after cleaning their house, while the Thompsons laughed inside over dinner. Those moments had shaped her. Every insult, every rejection, every ignored birthday had built a wall inside her. Not of hate, but of strength. Back in the present, the silence felt thick. Mr. Thompson finally spoke, his voice low and trembling. "Maya, I should have." Evelyn quickly cut him off. "Let's not dig up the past now." "No," Ryan said, glaring at his mother. "Maybe we should." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh please, what's next? Are we going to turn this dinner into a therapy session? Maya stood slowly. No, Vanessa. I don't want that. I just wanted honesty. She looked around the table, at her father's guilt, her brother's frustration, her stepmother's coldness, her sister's envy. I spent years wishing for a seat at this table. But tonight, I realized something. Vanessa crossed her arms. And what's that? Maya's eyes softened. I never needed this table to belong. I just needed to remember who I was without it. Her words hit harder than any insult could. Mr. Thompson rubbed his forehead, looking as though he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Evelyn stayed silent, biting her lip. Ryan looked at Maya with quiet respect. Then, like a crack in a dam, more truth began to spill out. Ryan turned to his father. You know what, Dad? Maybe it's time you admit it. We're not exactly the perfect family everyone thinks we are. Vanessa's business is failing. Mom's been selling off jewelry to cover bills, and you've been too tired to notice. Vanessa gasped. Ryan, it's true, he snapped. You've all been pretending everything's fine while treating Maya like she's the problem. But she's the only one here who's actually built something on her own. The table fell into chaos. Voices overlapping, accusations flying. Vanessa blamed Ryan for exposing her. Evelyn shouted at him for disrespecting his parents. And Mr. Thompson tried to calm them all down. Through it all, Maya remained still. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply watched, her face calm, her eyes distant, like someone finally seeing the truth she had always known. In that moment, she realized she didn't need to fight for space anymore. They were tearing themselves apart with secrets and pride, while she had already found peace. The dinner that began as a celebration had turned into a storm of truth, and through the noise, Maya sat in quiet strength, the only one not pretending anymore. Vanessa grabbed her purse and stood up so suddenly that her chair scraped across the floor. Her face was red with anger, her voice sharp. I don't have to sit here and listen to this, she shouted, glaring at Maya. She turned and stormed out of the restaurant, her heels clicking hard against the marble floor. Evelyn followed quickly behind her, but paused at the door. She looked back at Maya, her eyes full of cold bitterness. You'll never be one of us, she said quietly, then turned and walked away. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air felt heavy and still. The sound of distant music from the main dining room was the only thing that broke the silence. Maya stayed seated, her expression calm, though her hands trembled slightly under the table. She took a slow breath, then turned toward her father. You had a chance to tell them the truth all these years, she said softly. But you chose silence. Mr. Thompson's face was pale. He looked older than ever, tired, broken. His lips moved, but no words came out at first. Then, after a few seconds, his voice cracked. I know, he said. You're right. He pushed his plate aside and stood, his hands shaking. Maya is my daughter, he said, his voice growing louder. My blood. The best of all of you. And I failed her. Everyone froze. The few staff members nearby pretended not to hear, but their eyes flicked toward the table. Ryan sat completely still, staring at his father in shock. The words hung in the air. Words Maya had waited her whole life to hear, but now they didn't bring comfort. They just felt late. Mr. Thompson's eyes filled with tears. I should have defended you, he whispered. I should have protected you. I should have told the world who you are. Maya looked at him quietly, her expression soft but firm. I didn't need your words, Dad, she said. I just needed your respect. He took a shaky step toward her. I'm sorry, he said. Please forgive me. She stood facing him fully. He reached out, his hands trembling, trying to hug her. But Maya took a step back. It's too late for that, she said gently. But not too late for peace. Her words weren't angry. They were calm, almost kind. And that calmness hit harder than any shouting ever could. Mr. Thompson's shoulders sagged. He covered his face with his hands, crying quietly, the proud man now broken by guilt and regret. Ryan stood too, looking between them. He walked over to Maya, his voice low. You don't have to forgive him, but thank you for trying tonight. You did what none of us ever had the courage to do. Maya gave him a small smile. It's not about courage, Ryan. It's about letting go. For a while, no one said anything. The waiter came to clear the plates, moving carefully, sensing the tension but pretending not to notice. Mr. Thompson finally looked up, his eyes red. Maya, he said. I want to make things right. Whatever it takes. She shook her head softly. You can't fix the past, Dad. You can only live better in the time you have left. He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. You're right, he said. You always were. Maya took her purse and glanced toward the door where Vanessa and Evelyn had disappeared. They'll never accept me, she said quietly. And that's fine. I don't need them to. Ryan reached for her hand. You've always been stronger than all of us. Maya gave a small, tired smile. No, Ryan. I just learned how to survive without waiting for anyone to love me first. As she turned to leave, her father called after her, his voice trembling. Maya. She stopped and looked back. Thank you, he said softly, for giving me one more chance to face the truth. She nodded. Goodbye, Dad. Then she walked toward the door, her steps slow but steady. She didn't look back. Behind her, Mr. Thompson sank back into his chair, his hands shaking as he whispered to himself, She's my daughter, and I never deserved her. In that moment, the power had quietly shifted. The man who once controlled everything, the house, the family, the silence, now sat small and broken, while the woman they had ignored all her life walked away with her head held high. Maya didn't win by shouting or fighting. She won by standing tall, by refusing to let their rejection define her anymore. For the first time, she didn't feel like the outsider, she felt free. After dinner, Maya went to the front desk and quietly paid the bill. The manager tried to tell her everything had already been covered, but she smiled and said, I know. I just want to make sure the staff are properly tipped. She thanked each waiter and waitress warmly, shaking their hands and telling them they did a wonderful job. The kindness in her voice was calm and genuine, the kind of grace that came from strength, not pride. Outside, the night air was cool and soft. Ryan hurried after her, calling, Maya, wait. She stopped and turned, holding her purse loosely in one hand. Ryan looked nervous, unsure where to start. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he said. For everything. For pretending not to see you all those years. For not speaking up tonight sooner. Maya looked at him quietly for a moment before answering. You don't owe me a big speech, Ryan. I understand. He shook his head. No, you don't. You were right. We treated you like you didn't belong, and you still showed more kindness than any of us did. She smiled softly. I forgave you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. I just need space now, space to live my life without old pain pulling me back. Ryan nodded, his eyes downcast. I get it, he said. I hope someday we can start over properly. Maybe, she said gently. But not today. She gave him a small hug, then stepped back. Take care of yourself, Ryan. He watched her walk toward her car, calm, graceful, and stronger than she had ever seemed before. Later that night, Maya sat by her window sipping tea. Her phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. It wasn't an apology. Instead, it read, Hey, I heard your company is working with the Johnson Group. Could you introduce me to someone there? We're trying to get a contract. Maya stared at the message for a long moment, then pressed delete. She didn't reply. She didn't need revenge. Silence was enough. A week later, she received a letter in the mail. It was from her father. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. In the letter, Mr. Thompson said he was adding her name to his will. He wrote about how sorry he was, how he wished he had been a better man, a better father. He said he wanted to meet again, just the two of them, to make peace before it was too late. Maya folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. She didn't write back. Some things didn't need closure. A few days later, she drove out of the city to a quiet cemetery on the edge of town. She carried a small bouquet of white lilies, her mother's favorite flowers. Kneeling by the simple headstone, she brushed some leaves away and placed the flowers gently on the grave. For a while she said nothing. The wind moved softly through the trees. Then she whispered, I'm finally free, Mom. Her voice was steady, not sad. There were no tears this time, only peace. She stayed there for a while, watching the sunset fade into soft colors. The world felt still, lighter than it had in years. Maya stood, brushed off her dress, and smiled faintly at the sky. She had spent her whole life waiting to be accepted, to be loved by a family that never truly saw her. But now she understood. She didn't need their approval to belong. She belonged to herself, and that was enough. Weeks later, Maya sits alone at the same restaurant, the same place where everything changed. The soft music plays in the background, and the lights glow warmly across the room. She isn't dressed to impress, just a simple, elegant dress, her hair loose and a calm smile on her face. She's reading a small book, slowly turning the pages, her cup of tea beside her. The waiter from before walks up and recognizes her instantly. "Good evening, Miss Thompson," he says politely. "Will anyone be joining you tonight?" Maya looks up, her eyes kind but steady. She smiles and replies softly, "No, not tonight. I'm just enjoying my own company." The waiter nods and smiles back. "That's wonderful, ma'am. Would you like your usual table service?" "Yes, please," she says, closing her book gently. "And thank you for that night." He bows slightly. "I remember. You handled it with grace." Maya just smiles again, her eyes peaceful. It's easier to be calm when you finally stop fighting to be seen. He leaves her alone, and the camera lingers on her face. She looks out the window, where cars pass by, people rush, and the city lives on, but she sits still, content. There's no bitterness in her anymore, only peace. The same place that once made her feel invisible now feels like her own space. As the camera slowly pulls back, Maya takes a quiet sip of her tea and opens her book again, smiling to herself. A soft voiceover closes the scene. Sometimes the tables turn. Sometimes they stay the same. But if you own the table, you never have to beg for a seat again. The music swells gently. Fade out. Hey besties. Two Hearts, thanks so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories. See you in the next one. Bye. Waving hand sparkles.